In the previous lesson, we talked about paths, but paths would be nowhere without anchor points because the anchor points control the paths. Now I've got a little demo for you here called Anchors 101. If you want to open that up and play along, please do. Over here, let me show you something. This is what an anchor point looks like if it's unselected. Kind of looks hollow. Now the blue color I'm just using. Every layer in Adobe Illustrator would have its own color. We'll talk more about that later, but I'm just using this as an example. If you select one of these, it then becomes a selected anchor point, and it would probably look something like that. Of course, the color might be different, but it would be solid, meaning you got it, meaning you can move it, do anything you want with it. You may also see an anchor point that to me looks like a Martian because it's this little thing in the middle and it's got these antennae going out on the left and the right. Now this is called a smooth or a curved anchor point. You may eliminate the word anchor and just hear things like selected point, unselected point, smooth point, whatever. It's just a word. But anchor points control actually the paths. Without anchor points, the paths would have no idea on what they're supposed to do. So I have a blank document right here, so feel free to create a blank document. Let's do some live demos. I'm going to pick up the pen tool right here. Again, don't worry if you've not used one before. We've got a whole chapter on the pen tool. But if I come over here, notice the asterisk next to the pen tool? That means something. That means you're about to create a new object. Doesn't know what it is yet, but you're about to create your first anchor point to create it. So if I click here, here's my first one. It says anchor. If I move away from it, I love that smart cursor. It's telling me right now that my distance from that anchor point is 104.84 pixels. That's pretty precise. If I come over a little bit more this way, and if I see that line, that just means if you click now, you get a perfectly straight line. So if I click, I've created a path, if you will, and the path is being controlled by the anchors. It's kind of like two nails in a board, and you've stretched a rubber band between the two. Without the nails, the rubber band would have nowhere to attach itself. That's what anchor points are. They're extremely important. Now you will notice if I want to create another point, this thing's going to keep connecting and connecting and connecting. Let's say for the sake of argument that I want to start a new object. I drew a line, that's what I wanted to do. A lot of people will go over and select another tool and then come back to this one. Easier way to do that. Reach over on your keyboard now and hold down or press the return key, that's Mac, enter key on a Windows system, and you get back and now you've got a fresh cursor again. Let me do this. That's an open shape. Okay, let's create a closed one. If I click here, there's our first point. Let's come down to about here. Now the simplest two-dimensional shape you could ever create, of course, would be a triangle. So we get about here, and then we come up. Now you see a little circle appear next to the tool, and we have closed off that shape. But notice what we've been doing. We've been creating the shape just by clicking. If all you do is click with the pen tool, you're creating straight lines, the shortest distance between 2 points. You could do this. If I come over here again and click, oh, notice that since this shape was closed off, I got my cursor back for a new object. If I click here and drag, I get these lines coming off of the anchor point. The lines control the curvature. If I get right about here and click and drag, say, the other direction, or this way, either way, I'm creating a curved path. The path would have no idea what to do if it wasn't for those two anchor points, or in this case, these three. Now, if I come over here and pick up the direct selection tool right there, if I come over to this one, let's start with this one. If I click on that anchor point, see how it gets a little bit bigger? That's part of preferences. If I select it, notice it gets solid, where this one over here isn't. It's hollow. That means I've got that one grabbed onto. If I use my arrow keys or drag it, I can change it. Just as easy as that. If I want to select both of them, I could shift click on this one right here, which would allow both to be selected, and then I could move it as a unit. Or an easier way, if it's a complicated object, would be just to drag a marquee around it. And in a sense, you've got them both selected. Let's go to the pyramid. I want the top of the pyramid to be a little bit more centered. I need to move it to the left a little bit. So I could select that anchor right there and move that a little bit to the left. Again, we're eyeballing it right now. I could make it taller if I wanted to. I could come down and marquee both of these down here, and then go ahead, I guess, and change it any way I wanted to. But let's go back to this one here. This is the one that has these directional curves on it. And select it. There are the 2 points. And you'll notice we've got handles on either side. If I click right here, the whole thing moves as a unit, which is fine. But if I come over here and grab this one, now notice what happens. It only influences what's going on to the right of that anchor point. If I go to this one, it only influences what's going on to the left of the anchor point. Now on this one, there is no extra connecting piece. So if I select it and come up to this one right here and move it up and down, nothing's going to happen because it's presupposing that sooner or later I'm going to put something on this end, and when I do, it'll control it. But if I come down to this one, get on that handle, watch that handle, and go up and down, it is now controlling that one piece right there. Now we're going to get a whole lot more into anchors and into pads and how they work and how you control them. But understand, as important as pads are, you wouldn't have any pads if you didn't have anchors controlling how the pads are put together. Anchors and pads, the backbone of any Adobe Illustrator document. On to the next.